But more than anything, you know what it had? It had two teams with two very different situations at quarterback. And so when I look at this game, when I break down Texas, Alabama, and when I think about what was the ultimate decider of this game, it comes down to one thing for me. Alabama had its Heisman Trophy winning, potential number one overall pick on the field late, making plays like Bryce Young does. Unfortunately for Texas, they obviously didn't. Quinn Ewers gets hurt. And to me, that was the difference in the game. First of all, for Alabama, we're going to get into it in a minute. I can't ever remember a scenario where Alabama looked as bad, as disorganized, as sloppy as they did on Saturday afternoon. This was a team that finished with 15 penalties, the most of the Nick Saban era, 100 penalty yards, missed assignments. The defense was on its heels when Quinn Ewers was in the game. The offensive line gave up some big sacks. The run game was non-existent in part because of Bill O'Brien. And none of it mattered because Alabama had Bryce Young. Bryce Young changed this game. Bryce Young won this game with two plays. It reminded me of a lot of games last year where Bryce Young just did Bryce Young stuff late. The two plays, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They came late. They came in the fourth quarter. They came in winning time. Early in the fourth quarter, Alabama is trailing. Bryce Young drives Alabama the length of the field. Crazy play, about to be tackled, spins, touchdown pass, gives Alabama a slight lead, 17-16 with about 7 minutes to go, pass to Jahmyr Gibbs. From there, a few minutes later, Texas gets the ball back, drives the length of the field. Shout out Will Anderson, who made a big sack to make the Texas field goal a little bit longer. But then how about our boy, Texas kicker Bert Auburn? Bert Auburn is this guy's name, kicks a field goal to put Texas up 19-17. And then Bryce Young again drives Alabama the length of the field. Will Reichert hits a game-winning field goal. But let's be honest, Bryce Young had a 20-yard run a few plays earlier to put Alabama in field goal position to win the game. That was the difference, and the difference was Bryce Young. Alabama gets the win 20-19, and I'll just be honest. As I sit back and look, as I sit back and say what I have to say, what jumps out to me is exactly what I just said a few minutes ago. Alabama gets the win because of Bryce Young. Nick Saban just gushes praise upon him about his leadership, about his preparation, about his ability, about all the stuff that he does. But I also think it speaks to the question that I have coming out of this game. When you think back to Texas, Alabama, 2022 in Austin on September 10th, what is the bigger question coming out? Is it your concerns with Alabama, or are you just impressed by Texas? And I think it could be a little bit of both. From Alabama, as I said, I don't ever remember a game where Alabama looked as disorganized, as unfocused, as undisciplined, as unprepared as they did on Saturday, okay? There have been plenty of games through the years where Alabama has faced a team with equal or better talent. Georgia last year, Clemson in the title game a few years ago, LSU when LSU had Joe Burrow. There have been times where they just ran into a team that was better. Rarely have I seen them beat themselves as much as they did on Saturday. That's no disrespect to Texas. We're going to get to them. They looked awesome. They looked fantastic. But at the same time, what did I just say about Alabama? 15 penalties, 100 penalty yards. By the way, my guy, Will Anderson, my Heisman Trophy pick, 2 or 3 offsides penalties that were costly. The defensive backs looked lost when Quinn Ewers was in the game. The offensive line let defenders through a few times. Bryce Young took a few sacks. The run game was non-existent. I said this to my radio partner on Saturday night, Jason Martin. I said, name me a position group outside of quarterback with Bryce Young that you thought played at an elite level or even an average to above average level on Saturday in Austin. I think the answer is probably none of them, especially when you consider that Texas was playing with a backup quarterback for most of the game. And so when I look at Alabama, I'll be honest, I am a tiny bit worried going into the rest of the season. Now, listen, it's all relative. What's the old saying? Caviar problems, billionaire problems, whatever the term is. Alabama's problems are concerning relative to everybody else. Their problems aren't all that concerning. And what I would say is let's not discredit the fact that they went on the road, 105,000 people, biggest fan attendance in the history of Darrell Royal Stadium in Austin, and still found a way to get a win. But at the same time, it was hard not to watch that game and see the same concerns from last year with Alabama pop up once again. I thought Joel Klatt talked about it quite a bit during the game. Do they have that game-breaking, difference-making wide receiver? I remember talking about this last year when Jameson Williams, Jameson Williams came on late, but outside of Jameson Williams, first-round pick now playing for the Detroit Lions, who was that guy for Alabama last year? He didn't exist. And so with Alabama, it was a lot of stalled drives. It was a lot of this. It was a lot of that. Jameson Williams was able to bail them out. But when Jameson Williams wasn't making plays, it was hard to get those big explosive plays that you need to win at the highest level of college football. Well, you look at Alabama on Saturday, it was very much the same. When it wasn't Bryce Young making plays with his feet, when it wasn't Bryce Young buying time in the pocket till his receivers got open, they didn't have those 2, 3, 4 difference makers. And I do really wonder, did we take for granted just how talented those 2018, 2019 Alabama teams were 2020 when they had Jalen Waddle, who now plays for the Miami Dolphins, Jerry Jeudy, who plays for the Denver Broncos, Devontae Smith, who won a Heisman Trophy, Najee Harris, who plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously, unfortunately, Henry Ruggs, who's no longer in the NFL for obvious reasons. And if you don't know him, you can Google him. Did we take for granted just how talented those teams were, especially at the skill positions? And then, oh, by the way, did we take for granted how great of a play caller Steve Sarkisian is? And so when I look at this Alabama team, this isn't time to panic. It's not time to worry. And if you go back to last year, let's not forget week 3, they go to Florida. They win by 2 points against a team that, as it turns out, Florida wasn't very good. 6-6 in the regular season, 5-6 when Dan Mullen got fired. Alabama almost lost in the swamp last year, early in the season, much like this year. And so it's not to say that you can't reach your goals or that you won't reach your goals. Because last year, Alabama almost lost in the third week of the season on the road, end up winning the SEC West, end up winning the SEC, and end up playing for a national championship. But what I would also say, we don't do where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong until Friday's show. But what I would say is that where Aaron was wrong, I thought this was going to be an all-time Alabama team, a team that was elite on defense, again, like last year, but then at the same time also had those skill position guys on offense. I'm not sure that that's what I see from Alabama this year. I think they're going to be really good, but they still have to play at Arkansas. Arkansas is no pushover. They looked awesome against South Carolina. They're going to have to play at Ole Miss. They're going to have to play at Tennessee. They're going to have to play Mississippi State, who they've had pretty good success with. Texas A&M is a story unto itself. The point I'm trying to make, Auburn at home. The point I'm trying to make, I thought this was a revenge tour. I thought this was a team that was going to steamroll everybody in college football this year. I don't know that I feel that way after the win against Texas. And I'll just say this again, you never want to discredit a team for going on the road and beating a good team. But at the same time, I don't think that I feel the exact same way about Alabama that I maybe did 2-3 weeks ago.